So this here's a video on how to paint power swords. So each of these models are carrying a power sword. We painted them all up at separate times, but we're going to conglomerate all those videos down into just one. The Gravis Captain as well as the Bladeguard Veteran have double-sided power swords, and then the Chaos Sorcerer just has a single-sided sword, a single-bladed sword. In any case, we'll show you how we painted both types, and then you can duplicate this if you find this helpful. Other than that, it's just going to serve as a reference for me in the future when I need to paint more swords so they all match. So if you like videos like this, please feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment. And otherwise than that, stay tuned and we'll show you how we painted up these power swords. So before we get started, this video is ending up being way longer than it needs to be, but I don't want to cut anything because you can see how it's done 3 different ways. So there's something useful here. But if you want to just skip to the paints we used to do these swords is a base coat of Thousand Suns Blue. And then we add a shade of Incubi Darkness. Then we add a highlight of Temple Guard Blue. And then we add another highlight over that of Gauss Blaster Green. We then blend it all together with a contrast paint of Talassar Blue. We add a new highlight of the Gauss Blaster Green, and then we add a very light edge highlight of White Scar. And that's pretty much the paints we used to do this. Now this ends up with a nice green tinge on our swords, but if you don't want the green tinge, all we have to do is swap the green shades with blue ones. So we'll swap the Incubi Darkness for a Cantor Blue, and we'll swap the Gauss Blaster Green for a Blue Horror. Now we didn't do that here. I like the green tinge. You've seen what it looks like, but if you want a rundown of what we did, that's pretty much our lineup right there. So that's a TLDR for the whole entire video, but stay tuned if you want, and we'll show you how we painted it up and the techniques we used to make what we had. So this here is going to be a video on how to paint up power swords. So we've got 2 candidates here. We've got a Bladeguard Veteran, which is a double-sided sword. As well, we've got a Chaos Sorcerer here with a single-sided blade. We've got this Gravis Captain here. And more importantly, his sword, which is finished, looks like this. So we're going to make the other 2 swords look like that one, and that's our final goal. So we're going to unite this up now by putting a base coat on it of Thousand Suns Blue. So that's a nice blue base. We'll spread it all over the sword, probably do 2 light runny coats. So the first thing we're going to do with the Chaos Sorcerer is we're going to put a base coat of Thousand Suns Blue over that power sword just to lighten it up and create a nice base color for the sword itself. So we're using a nice watered down layer, so it's fairly runny. We just want some good coverage. It'll probably take 2 coats to get what we want. So this is going to take a nice thin layer because the blade is so thin to begin with, we don't want to leave runs. So just a thin watered down layer or 2 of Thousand Suns Blue just to build up some of the color. So this is our model now. The first coat of Thousand Suns Blue watered down is there. I'm going to do a second one now. Nice base color. We'll leave it dry and we'll be back here in a few minutes. So now that's pretty much dry, and it's okay if it's a little bit wet because we do want to blend. We're going to take a little bit of that Incubi Darkness we were talking about and having it super watered down. And a little bit on the off side of the sword here. Making sure to respect the midline. then we'll do the same at the bottom of this side. A little bit of water to blend up the end there. Just like that. So we have a light side and a dark side of both. Now we'll do the same thing on the other side with the opposite ends. So we're going to take a little bit of Incubi darkness, and what we're going to do is the darker areas that don't catch the light, so in this case we'll probably make it this corner down here, and we'll use this top piece right here. We're going to very carefully brush the Incubi darkness on there, respecting the midline, and try to blend it off into the Thousand Suns blue that's over here. So we'll do that now and be back in a moment. And then with our Thousand Suns blue, and blend that in the other way here. So the finished product looks something like this, where you've got the top half darker, blending light, and the bottom half darker here, blending light that way. And on the other side of the blade, we're going to do the exact opposite, putting the light where the dark is and the dark where the light is. So we'll finish that up and be back here in a moment. So with our Chaos Sorcerer, we're going to take that little bit of Incubi darkness, and what we're going to do is just run it along the base of the sword, trying to keep that parallel curve. So something like that there. Creating a dark base like that. So here's our sword after we finish with the Incubi darkness. So you can definitely see that there's a darker side and a lighter side, and same in the bottom, but they're just opposite, and then same on the other side of the sword. Like so. Darker here, lighter there, so forth and so on. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add another highlight of Temple Guard blue, and we're going to do the lighter side up. It's super watered down, but we're going to make sure we respect the midline. Start at the top. Just sort of blend it off there. On this side we'll start at the bottom and blend it up. A little bit of water there and wet blend that. Add a few more watered down layers. Blending in the center. And we'll just keep waiting for that to dry. Blend, dry, blend. We'll be back here in a few minutes. So now with our Chaos Sorcerer, what we're going to do is take a little bit of Temple Guard Blue, which is much brighter, and we're just going to run that on the top half. Very watered down. Get wet blended into the space we had before. Like that. Do the same thing on the other side and be back in a few minutes. So our Sorcerer Sword now looks like that, with your Temple Guard Blue on the end and your Incubi Darkness on the beginning, and a nice wet blend between the two. This is how our model looks now that we finished with the Temple Guard Blue and the wet blend between the colors. This is our Power Sword now that we finished with the blending. So we've got the Temple Guard Blue on this end, the Incubi Darkness on that end, and then we've got the Thousand Suns Blue in the center. So with that, we've got a nice sort of two-tone Power Sword going on. And now we're going to take some Gauss Blaster Green with a very, very, very watered down layer to almost being a glaze. And we'll do the same thing as the Temple Guard Blue, starting at the tip. Just working it down and working it back up toward the tip there, like so. That's really going to lighten that up a bit as it dries. We'll do that layer a few more times. Running it up and then running it back down again, like so. So we'll do that a few more times, brighten that up, and be back in a few minutes. Starting at the high point. Very watered down. And just blend it in there as well. Dry brush a bit. And then blend it back the other way. Like that. And we're going to do the same thing in the bottom here. So our Chaos Sorcerer now, we're going to add the Gauss Blaster Green over the top of the Temple Guard Blue that was there now. And once again, just a touch of it at the end here. A little ways down the blade. So we're going to dry our brush. And just dry brush that rest of the way down. Like that. And then we'll just touch that up again. Finally, we're going to take a little bit of Talassar Blue contrast paint. And we're just going to lightly brush it right over the whole sword. That'll blend all our colors together and add a nice blue tinge to it. It's a contrast paint, but we can pull that back by dry brushing it back downwards. And then while it's still wet, add that Gauss Blaster Green again on the end. Something like that. The Power Sword as we're finished with the Gauss Blaster Green highlight. And as you can see, it looks pretty good. There is some sharp demarcations on some of the color. So we're going to blend all those back in using our contrast paint, Talassar Blue. And with an exceptionally runny layer, We're just going to put a nice coat over everything. Treat it like it's a glaze. So we're going to wash off half of what's there. That really blends it in nicely. So here's our Bladeguard powered sword. Now that we finished with the Talassar blue. So what we're going to do now is take a little bit more Gauss Blaster green. And this time we're just going to do the edge highlight. Just lightly along the edge. Just like that there, see? So we'll do that there. We're going to do another one straight up the center. And the same thing on the bottom. So once we finish that, we'll start putting an edge highlight of Gauss Blaster green on right around the edges and try to draw in that middle line if we can. And then we'll be back here in a minute when all that's finished. This is our sword now that we finished with our Gauss Blaster green edge highlight and the center highlight as well. So all we did was use the side of the brush very, very lightly with a dry brush, and then do the same with either end here. So what we can do now is just bring out a couple of little spots along that line, a little brighter still. So we'll use a little bit of white scar here. And we're going to dry brush that on very, very lightly. And just like this, just dry brush on a little bit just to add a little bit more brightness to that. Here's our power sword again. We're pretty much finished with it. As an option, you can take a little bit of white scar and you can just add a little tiny bit of edge highlight again, just to brighten up a couple of the areas here. Do it in patchy spots. Just add a little bit of brightness to that. And you can also put a couple of horizontal streaks. So this is our Chaos Sorcerer. After we finish with the Gauss Blaster green, we did our edge highlight, a little bit more visible on the bottom, and then the corners on the top. What I'm going to do now is take a little tiny bit of white scar, just to add one more light layer to that, and just very, very lightly edge highlight it. So this is the finished product of the two power swords that we did, as well as the original Gravis Captain. So as you can see, they all look pretty good. The blending all worked out nicely, and hopefully yours turned out just as good. If you like videos like this, like I said, if you found this helpful, please feel free to leave a comment or like, share the video, and otherwise not, subscribe if you can, and we'll talk to you at our next painting video.